This is this Sony 24-70 f2.8 G Master 2 lens, which I have to return to Sony tomorrow, and I'm pretty sad about that. Hey everyone, mariuszgajdzik here, and in this video we'll talk about the Sony 24-70 f2.8 G Master 2 lens, and I'm gonna tell you what I think about it. This lens is the best standard zoom lens with 24-70 f2.8 for Sony full frame system, but it has one major problem, and I'm gonna talk about that problem at the end of this video, so stick around so you can find out. And yes, I mentioned this lens is lent to me by Sony Poland and I have to return it tomorrow, but they lent it to me because I was making some content for them for Sony Alpha Academy Poland, and this video is not sponsored by them. They didn't have any input in this video, they didn't ask me to make it. I'm making it myself because I thought it's worth to do a video about the lens until I still got it. The diameter of this lens is 87.8 millimeters and the length is 119.9 millimeters. So this is making this lens shorter by 16 millimeters than the previous version of the 24-70 G Master from Sony. But it is still a little bit larger than the Tamron I've been using before, the 28-75 f2.8, which is 73 millimeters in diameter and 117.8 millimeter in length. So the Tamron has 50 millimeters in diameter and it's shorter by 2 millimeters as well. And it's similar in the weight, so this one is 695 grams. The previous version was 886 and the Tamron is 550. So this is about 200 grams less than the previous version and 150 grams more than the Tamron. So this lens is pretty much in the middle when it comes to the G Master 1, G Master 2 and the Tamron 28-75 first version. The filter diameter is 82 millimeters, the same as in the previous version, and the Tamron has a 67 millimeters. So I actually prefer that 82 because I can put my filter straight on it without any step-up rings. And with the Tamron I had to use these step-up rings because I have the free oil filters and KNF filters in 82 millimeters. So this is nice because I don't need to carry that extra step-up rings. The build quality is actually pretty nice over here. It's made out of plastic and rubber, and I actually feel like this is a nice quality plastic and rubber, and I don't think anything is gonna happen to it over the years you'll be using it. It also has this metal mount over here, so that's a nice plus because that's gonna mount to our camera by metal, not by plastic like some very cheap lenses over there. On the body of the lens we have a lot of buttons and switches, like these two function buttons that you can program to whatever you like. We have the AF/MF switch where you can switch to autofocus and manual focus, and we have the manual focus ring over here, and we have the zoom ring over here. And with the zoom ring we can use that smooth and tight switch to switch it from smooth like this to tight like this. And I actually really like it because it makes me use this lens as sort of like a prime lens where I can just move it to 35 millimeters and I know that's gonna stay there. And I used it quite a lot for overhead shots like that because I know that when I lock it to 35 millimeters it's gonna stay there when it is switched to tight over here. And when I want to zoom smoothly or quickly, I can just move it to smooth and move that zoom really quickly thanks to that. So I much prefer that smooth and tight switch than the lock switches like on some other lenses, like on the Tamron I think, when it's locking on the 28 millimeters or like if you have 70-180 on 70 millimeters and you can only lock on that one, where here you can sort of lock it on one of the focal lengths and it's gonna stay there and it's not gonna move when you move in with the lens over here. Like you can see it's staying there, and when we switch it to smooth and we do that, it zooms in. So that's really nice plus over here. I really like that. Other than that, we have an aperture ring, which I really love that they added that over here I really love that in my Fuji cameras that I've been using before, and when I switched to Sony, I've been missing that feature, and I'm happy that Sony has implemented it now with their G Master lenses and G lenses, some of the G lenses as well. And with that aperture ring, we can switch the aperture and there is a click to it. And I really like that fact that we have that click, because if I'm photographing, I want to know that click over here, that when I'm switch the aperture, I know I have that feedback over here with these clicks. And we can use that iris lock to lock it to just have the aperture ring, not be able to switch to A, or we can unlock it, switch it to A and lock it, or leave it unlocked. And if we're using that in A, we can then control our aperture with the scroll wheel on the camera, and when we have that on the aperture over here, we can control it with this aperture ring, and I really love to use that this way. I'm gonna miss that when I need to return that to Sony. And also with that aperture ring, we have ability to declick it, so we can use that for video. For example, if we want to switch our aperture smoothly without the clicks, when we filming the video we don't want the clicks and we want the aperture to change smoothly, we can have that over here thanks to that switch where we can turn off the clicks or turn it on. So it's nice to have the clicks for photography and have it without the clicks for video, and this is super nice, and I don't know how I will live without that when I return that lens. Other than that, the body of the lens is weather and dust proof, and it has that rubber gasket over here, so the water is not gonna get into it. And I tested that out in London when I was doing photography in the rain, and in Tatra mountains where there was a lot of moisture in the air when we were hiking, and the lens got a lot of water, especially in London, and it works perfectly well. The photos look perfectly fine. Actually, they look fantastic. I've actually been really happy with those London photos made with this lens. So yeah, you can have a peace of mind here with that weather sealing in this lens, compared to, for example, my Tamron, where it has a weather sealing as well, but it got a lot of dust inside when I was using it. I'm not sure how that happened, but I definitely don't see any dust inside of this lens, whereas my Tamron has collected a lot of dust over the years, and I'm not sure how that happened. We have 4 linear XD motors for autofocus here, which makes this lens autofocus just amazing. It's just so quick, it's just so snappy, so accurate. The autofocus on this lens is just so good. I've never had an issue where it missed focus. And you can actually see right now how it tracks me when I'm walking towards and back to the camera. It's just so good when it comes to autofocus with tracking, eye tracking, tracking the subjects, or whatever you want to do with autofocus on that lens. Just works really, really well and really quickly, really accurately. The minimal focus distance for 24mm focal length is 0.21 meters, and for the 70mm is 0.3 meters, which is actually really nice and an improvement from the previous version. And this actually is really helpful for when you want to get close-ups of things and you can get quite close to those things. The focus breathing here is actually very nice. You can just notice a little bit of it, but the Sony cameras now, like all the new Sony cameras, have the compensation mode for that. Even the Sony FX3 has it now, thank you Sony. And so that wasn't an issue for me at all when I was using that lens. But if it is an issue for you, you can always switch on the lens breathing compensation, and that's gonna fix all your issues. When it comes to the manual focus, we have the linear manual focus. So when we want to manual focus, we can, like, for example, mark it with a tape where we set the focus before. We can unfocus that and focus back to it, and we know that our focus gonna be in focus, like our subject gonna be in focus, you know what I mean. So this is really nice for like follow focus systems, etc. And it's actually much better than if it was not linear manual focus. There's no image stabilization in this lens, sadly, but none of the 24-70 or 28-70 or 28-75 lenses for Sony system have that. because we have that IBIS in the Sony cameras, Sony full frame cameras, so it's gonna do a good job stabilizing this lens with the sensor stabilization. So it would be nice if we had the similar stabilization like with the Sony 70-200 f2.8 G Master 2 lens. We don't have that. I'm not gonna cry about it because the image stabilization of Sony cameras are actually gonna do a great job stabilizing the footage from that lens. When it comes to the image quality, this lens is actually quite amazing for me, how good the image quality in this lens is. I would actually risk saying that the image quality is the closest in a zoom lens to prime lenses. So this lens really gives you a really nice quality images when you know how to use it. The sharpness of the image is really good when it comes to like middle of the frame and the sides of the frame, and it's actually really good on all the focal lengths, so 24, 30, 50, 70 and everything in between. I'm gonna say it actually blows my mind how good the image quality on that lens is. But of course, with this sort of lens, the zoom lens, there is some problems. There is a little bit of vignetting, like just a tiny bit, a little bit of distortion, again tiny bit, and you can correct those with the profiles in the camera. So if you're filming with the camera, the Sony camera, it's gonna correct that straight away. If you're gonna do raw photos, you're gonna probably edit them in Lightroom, and Lightroom has a profile for that, so it's gonna correct them again. So that's not an issue for me because I'm gonna get a proper image in the end, so yeah, it shouldn't be an issue for you too. The only issue that I could find was the fact that it has a little bit of chromatic aberration, which is a little bit harder to fix in post, so that might be something to keep in mind when you're photographing. Maybe sometimes just close the aperture a little bit more to get rid of it, but again, I don't think it's gonna be a huge issue when it comes to that lens. The background blur, again, blows my mind how good the background blur on this lens is, and I think it's actually very similar to the prime lenses that I've tested so far. It's actually like, this is the thing that makes this G Master lenses really good. The blur out backgrounds are just so smooth, so nice. It just blows my mind how good that works. So if you want a lens that's gonna give you the nicest blurred out backgrounds, this is the lens to get, you know. This is the lens that's giving you the best bokeh. Similarly, if you're working against the light with the backlight, this lens is working like that pretty well. It doesn't have much of flaring, it doesn't have much of ghosting. So if you're working against the light, if you're working with backlight and you want the best quality, again, this is the lens that's gonna give you the best image possible. Of course, talking about the standard zoom lenses like 24-70. So for me, this lens is actually really great, and what I love about it the most is the fact that we have all those controls on the body of the lens. We have that focusing ring, we have that switches, we have that buttons, we have that smooth and tight mode for zoom, we have that aperture ring and all those things that we can do with it. And I don't have any of that in my Tamron. I just have the zoom ring and focus ring. This is so nice when it comes to using it. I'm gonna miss it a lot when it comes to usability. There's all those controls on the body of the lens. And also I love the fact that it gives me a very good quality, and I actually think the focal length of 24-70 is actually much better for filming or doing photography. And thanks to that, this lens was like 90% of the time on my camera, because it was wide enough on most situations and it was tight enough on most situations. Because the 70-75 isn't that much of a difference, but 28-24 it is a little bit of a difference, and I've noticed that I can still use it to like vlog on it. I can still use it to record like some sort of like, for example, this sort of videos, whereas with the 28 is a little bit too tight for me already, so I'm using the 24 on the 17-28 Tamron right now. So this is the things that I really love about this lens. But now we need to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the biggest minus, and it is the price, which is $2,300. which is a lot, and that is gonna be the major factor of deciding which lens should you get. This one for 2300 or other lenses which are much cheaper, and those lenses are gonna give you pretty similar effects if you don't work professionally. So I think this lens, if you're a professional, if you work as a photographer, as a videographer, as like a YouTuber who has quite a substantial income and can afford this sort of lens, I think this lens is a very good investment, and it's gonna work for you, and it's gonna make you money and probably pay itself off really quickly if this lens is gonna stay on your camera and work for you. But if you are an amateur or hobbyist, if you're just taking photos for Instagram, or you just having fun, or like you want to have a lens that you can carry always with you and take photos of your children or of like your pets or of your travel or whatever, then you probably don't want to spend $2,300, and you can spend less for that lens, and you're still gonna get very good quality images, very good quality video if you go to other lenses. But you still will want to buy this one in the end when you can afford it, when you know, because you know this lens is the best and you don't have the best. So it worked like that. It worked like that for me. I have a Tamron 2875, but I wished about that lens for a very long time. I was very fortunate to be able to test it out for quite a long time, I think like half a year, and now I will be missing it a lot in my bag, and I hope that Sony is gonna bring it back to me one day, or otherwise I will need to buy it, because I've been loving that lens ever since I got it, and I will be missing it. Okay, I think this is pretty much everything about this lens. If you have anything to add or any questions, please leave them in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like, subscribe to my channel and ring the bell so you don't miss any of the future content similar to this one. And I would also love if you follow me on Instagram, where I try to post daily about what's up with me and what I'm currently working on. This is everything for this video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.